Welcome to the Edgar Rice Burroughs mini podcast number 12. These short podcasts are a supplement to the full-length episodes that I host along with Jess Terrell and Scott Stewart. In those full-length episodes, we usually discuss a specific novel by Burroughs in detail. For the current set of mini podcasts, we're going through the 1912 novel Tarzan of the Apes, chapter by chapter. And my name is Tim DeForest. I'm the author of a couple of books about what I call pre-digital pop culture, such as pulp magazines and old-time radio. I also maintain a blog called Comics, Old-Time Radio, and Other Cool Stuff, in which I write about these subjects. Now, in this episode, we're going to be diving into Chapter 4 of Tarzan of the Apes. Keep in mind that I will include spoilers, and I also recommend that you take a few minutes to reread the chapter before listening to this podcast. I will be assuming listeners are familiar with the events of the chapter as I discuss them. This chapter is titled The Apes, and this indeed is where we really begin to meet the apes of Kerchak, who will be Tarzan's adopted family throughout much of the book. These apes are a completely fictional species. Kala, Tarzan's mom, is described in this way, but she was still an ape, a huge, fierce, terrible beast of a species closely allied to the gorilla, but yet more intelligent, which, with the strength of their cousin, made her kind the most fearsome of those awe-inspiring progenitors of man. Now, I think Burroughs does an excellent job of presenting us with a species of animal that is intelligent enough to have a language, but Burroughs does not simply characterize them as hairy human beings. They are clearly not humans. They're not as intelligent as human beings, and they're still animal-like in much of their behavior. We never think of them as human. The fact that they all casually return to their regular activities after Kerchak kills two of them in a rage is our initial reminder of their physical and mental separation from mankind. Now, the chapter starts with Kerchak's temper tantrum, with the big ape rampaging through the tribe and actually killing a few other apes. It's during that rampage that Kala's newborn son is also killed. This allows Burroughs to establish the characters of both Kerchak and Kala in different and important ways, ways that will affect the story as it progresses. Kerchak is the leader because he's bigger and stronger than the other apes, given to violent outbursts of rage and simply not a nice guy. Burroughs is dropping the information we need to later be able to believe that Kerchak and Tarzan will eventually have a fight. Kerchak is always in a bad mood, always on the cusp of committing violence, and always holding a grudge against those he thinks have wronged him. On the other hand, Burroughs stresses the particularly strong maternal instincts that Kala harbors. We need to believe that she will care for Tarzan through what, from the perspective of the apes, will be a long, long childhood. The action of this chapter flows quickly, but Burroughs continues to expand on Kerchak's and Kala's personalities through the action. Kerchak wants revenge on John Clayton because of the various apes John has killed with his thunderstick. Kerchak also wants that thunderstick. So when catching the distraught John unawares in the cabin and killing him, we see Kerchak's desire for power in his behavior towards the rifle. We also get a reminder that Kerchak isn't human and doesn't have human intelligence. He knows this rifle kills, but he doesn't know how or why, can never really understand it. I love the image of him pacing up and down next to the rifle, working up his courage first to touch it and then to pick it up, and then fleeing the cabin in a panic when the gun goes off. It's a perfect way to quantify just what sort of creatures the apes are. Burroughs also fires off a Chekhov's gun when Kerchak and the apes flee the cabin. When the door is pulled shut, the, quote, cleverly built latch, unquote, locks it shut, keeping the apes from ever re-entering it. This was the reason that Burroughs made a point of mentioning the lock in the previous chapter, and it serves in another important plot point. The books, the skeletons, and John's diary are all preserved there, first allowing Tarzan to learn to read and write a few years down the line, and later providing the information needed to find out about Tarzan's actual family history. Kala, in the meantime, has dropped her dead baby in the crib and taken up Tarzan. Burroughs covers his bases here as well to make this as believable as possible. Tarzan is a year old, so he can survive the rough handling he'll undoubtedly get even in the embrace of the relatively gentle Kala. Kala remembers that her own baby fell to its death when it lost its grip around her neck, so she decides to carry Tarzan around everywhere rather than try to make the baby hang on to her. She wouldn't have known that he was incapable of holding on the way an ape baby could, but she had reason for not requiring him to do so regardless. It's really quite a clever bit of storytelling. So the chapter ends with the baby soon to be named Tarzan now being cared for by the only creature he will ever know as his mother. We'll be back soon to look at Chapter 5. Thank you for listening. Once again, my name is Tim DeForest. Please feel free to visit my blog at Comics, Old Time Radio, and other cool stuff. You can find a link to my Amazon.com author page there. And keep an ear out for our full-length podcast.